The company holiday party was in full swing when my wife decided to make her grand announcement. She slid her wedding ring off her finger right there at our table, held it up for everyone to see, and declared with a laugh that echoed across the room, "Look at me acting single tonight." The conversations around us stopped. My colleagues, their spouses, everyone within earshot turned to look. She was clearly enjoying the attention, the shocked expressions, the uncomfortable silence that followed. This wasn't just some playful comment. She meant it, and she wanted everyone to know it. I took a sip of my drink, set it down calmly, and looked her straight in the eye. "No need to act. You are single now." The color drained from her face for just a moment before she forced that fake smile back on. She thought I was bluffing, playing along with her little game. But I wasn't playing anything. The moment she removed that ring and announced her intentions to a room full of people who knew us both, she made her choice crystal clear. She stood up from our table, that ring still clutched in her hand like some kind of trophy, and immediately started working the room, flirting with my boss, laughing too loudly at every joke, touching arms, leaning in close during conversations. The whole performance was designed to humiliate me, to show everyone that she could do whatever she wanted while I just sat there and took it. But here's what she forgot about tonight's guest list. Her best friend was here too. I'd gotten her the job in our marketing department 6 months ago when she was unemployed and desperate. My wife had been against it from the start, claiming she didn't want to mix personal relationships with my work environment. But I knew the real reason for her objection. She'd always been suspicious of the way her friend looked at me, the way she found excuses to text me, the gratitude that went just a little too far. While my wife was busy making a spectacle of herself across the room, her friend appeared at my table. She looked genuinely concerned, almost embarrassed by what was happening. "I can't believe she's acting like this," she said, sliding into the chair next to mine. "You don't deserve this kind of treatment." I thanked her for the support, and we started talking, really talking, about work, about life, about how sometimes people show you exactly who they are when they think they have all the power. She was wearing this dark blue dress that complemented her perfectly, and I found myself noticing things I'd forced myself to ignore for months. The way she listened when I spoke, the genuine warmth in her laugh, the fact that she was everything my wife wasn't being tonight. "Would you like to dance?" she asked, glancing toward the dance floor where other couples were swaying to the music. I looked across the room at my wife, who was now practically sitting on my boss's lap while he showed her something on his phone. She caught my eye for a second and gave me this smug little wave, like she was checking to make sure I was watching her performance. "I'd love to," I told her friend, and stood up to offer my hand. We walked to the dance floor together, and I could feel eyes following us. This was a company party. After all, everyone knew everyone else's business. They'd all witnessed my wife's announcement, seen her remove her ring, watched her spend the last hour treating our marriage like a joke. The music was slow, intimate. She stepped into my arms naturally, comfortably, like we'd done this 100 times before. Her hand found its place on my shoulder, mine settled at her waist, and we began to move together. There was nothing performance about it, no exaggerated movements, no loud laughter designed to draw attention. Just two people dancing, connecting, sharing a moment that felt more genuine than anything I'd experienced in months. "She's watching us," she whispered, her breath warm against my ear. "Good," I replied, and meant it. She wanted everyone to see her acting single. Now she can see what single actually looks like. We danced closer, more intimately. Her friend, who'd always been quietly beautiful, always been kind, always been everything my wife claimed to be but never actually was, relaxed completely in my arms. There were no games here, no manipulation, no attempts to hurt or humiliate. Just honesty, attraction, and the kind of connection that happens when two people finally stop pretending they don't feel what they feel. I could see my wife's reflection in the windows behind the bar. She'd stopped flirting entirely now, stopped laughing, stopped pretending to enjoy herself. She was staring at us with an expression I hadn't seen from her in years, pure, undiluted shock. The same woman who'd confidently removed her ring 20 minutes ago was now watching her husband dance intimately with her best friend, and for the first time tonight, she wasn't in control of the narrative. The song ended, but we didn't separate immediately. We stood there for a moment, still close, still connected, both of us understanding that something had fundamentally changed, not just between us, but in the entire dynamic of the evening. That's when the explosion happened. She came storming across that dance floor like a hurricane, her face twisted with rage that I'd never seen before. The confident, playful woman who'd been flirting with half the room just minutes earlier was gone, replaced by someone completely unhinged. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" she screamed, loud enough that every conversation in the vicinity stopped dead. The DJ even turned down the music slightly, sensing the drama unfolding on his dance floor. I didn't step away from her friend. I didn't look embarrassed or caught. I simply turned to face my wife with the same calm expression I'd maintained all evening. "I'm dancing with a lovely woman who actually wants to be here with me. That's my best friend," she shrieked, pointing at us like she'd caught us committing some unforgivable crime. "And 20 minutes ago, you announced to this entire room that you were single," I replied evenly. "You removed your wedding ring in front of my colleagues, my boss, and everyone we know. You made it very clear that our marriage was over. So now I'm acting accordingly." Her friend stepped slightly behind me, not out of fear, but out of respect for what was clearly becoming a very public end to a marriage. She'd been nothing but appropriate all evening. It was my wife who'd created this entire situation. "I was just having fun," my wife shouted, her voice cracking slightly. "You know I didn't mean it." The crowd around us was growing larger. My boss and his wife had moved closer, along with several other colleagues and their spouses. This wasn't the kind of scene you could ignore or pretend wasn't happening. My wife had made sure of that with her grand announcement earlier. "Fun?" I asked, letting a slight edge creep into my voice for the first time all evening. "You called removing your wedding ring and announcing your single status to a room full of people fun? You spent the last hour flirting with every man here, including my boss, while I watched. That was your idea of fun." She opened her mouth to respond, but I wasn't finished. "You wanted everyone here to see you acting single. Congratulations, they did. They watched you disrespect our marriage, disrespect me, and make a spectacle of yourself. And now they're watching you realize that actions have consequences." My boss stepped forward then, clearly uncomfortable with the situation but feeling obligated to intervene. "Maybe we should all take a step back here," he suggested diplomatically. My wife whirled on him with that same fury. "This is between me and my husband. He's the one making a scene." I almost laughed at that. Almost. Instead, I looked directly at my boss and spoke clearly, making sure everyone within earshot could hear. "Sir, I apologize that our personal situation has disrupted your party. My wife announced her single status to the room earlier this evening and has spent the last hour acting on that announcement. I'm simply responding to the new reality she created." Several people nodded in understanding. They'd all seen what happened. They'd watched her remove her ring, heard her declaration, witnessed her behavior throughout the evening. I wasn't the one who'd created this situation. I was just the one refusing to pretend it hadn't happened. "You're twisting everything," she screamed, and now the tears were starting. The rage was giving way to panic as she began to realize that her little game hadn't gone the way she'd planned. "I never said I wanted a divorce." "You didn't have to," I replied calmly. "You showed everyone exactly what you wanted. You wanted to be single tonight. You wanted to act like our marriage didn't exist. You wanted to humiliate me in front of people I work with every day. Well, you got it." Her friend touched my arm gently, a small gesture that somehow conveyed both support and understanding. She'd been watching this train wreck unfold too, probably longer than anyone realized. She'd seen how my wife treated me, how she took my kindness for granted, how she'd turned what should have been a simple company party into a public humiliation. "This is insane," my wife said, but her voice was smaller now, less certain. "You can't just decide our marriage is over because of one night." "I didn't decide anything," I told her. "You did. The moment you took off that ring and announced your intentions to this room, you made the decision for both of us. I'm just accepting it." She looked around desperately, as if hoping someone in the crowd would support her, tell me I was being unreasonable, convince me to forgive her little performance. But the faces looking back at her weren't sympathetic. They were uncomfortable, embarrassed for her, clearly wishing she would just stop making the scene worse. "Please," she whispered, and now the tears were flowing freely. "Can we just go home and talk about this privately?" I considered that for a moment, looking at her carefully. The woman who'd been so confident, so sure of her power over me just an hour ago, was now begging me to salvage what she'd publicly destroyed. The same woman who'd wanted an audience for her Declaration of Independence was now asking for privacy when she realized the consequences. "There's nothing left to talk about," I said finally. "You made yourself very clear tonight. In front of all these people, you showed everyone exactly how much our marriage means to you. I'm not going to pretend I didn't see it, and I'm not going to pretend it didn't happen." She reached for my hand then, but I stepped back slightly. Not dramatically, not cruelly, but definitively. The gesture was small, but in front of all those witnesses, it spoke volumes. "I'll be staying at a hotel tonight," I announced, speaking to her, but loud enough that our audience understood the situation was concluded. "We can discuss the practical details later." Her face went completely white at that. The finality of it, the public nature of it, the fact that I wasn't going to be drawn into a private argument where she could manipulate the narrative, it all hit her at once. "You can't be serious," she breathed. But I was already walking away, her friend beside me, leaving my wife standing alone on that dance floor in front of everyone she'd tried so hard to impress just minutes before. I drove straight to the Marriott downtown, her friend following in her own car. We didn't plan it that way. It just made sense. She'd offered to help me get checked in, make sure I was okay after what had clearly been one of the most defining nights of my marriage. The hotel lobby was quiet at this hour, just the soft hum of late-night travelers and business people. As I signed the registration paperwork, my phone started buzzing. Text after text, call after call, all from her. "I'm sorry. Please come home. We need to talk. You're being ridiculous. I can't believe you're doing this to us." I showed the messages to her friend as we sat in the lobby bar. She shook her head in disbelief. "She still doesn't get it, does she? She thinks this is something you're doing to her." That was exactly right. Even now, even after everything that had happened tonight, my wife couldn't see that she'd created this situation entirely by herself. In her mind, I was the one being unreasonable. I was the one overreacting. I was the one destroying our marriage. "She's always been like this," her friend said quietly, nursing the drink I'd bought her. "Even back in college, everything was always someone else's fault. Every consequence was unfair. Every reaction was an overreaction. I'd suspected as much, but hearing it confirmed by someone who'd known her for over a decade was enlightening." "You've been watching this for a while, haven't you?" She nodded, looking almost guilty. "I should have said something earlier. Should have warned you about what she was really like when she didn't get her way. But you seemed happy, and I thought maybe marriage had changed her." My phone rang again. This time I answered it. Thank God. My wife's voice came through, breathless and desperate. "Where are you? I've been calling and calling. I told you I'd be at a hotel." "Which hotel? I need to see you. We need to fix this." "There's nothing to fix," I said calmly. "You made your position very clear tonight. You're single, remember? That was your announcement. I was just being stupid. I was having too much to drink and showing off. You know I didn't mean it. Actually, I think you meant every word of it. The ring, the announcement, the flirting, the complete disrespect. That was all very deliberate. You wanted everyone to see that you could do whatever you wanted while I sat there and took it." Silence on the other end for a moment. Then, "Okay, maybe I was trying to make a point. Maybe I felt like you've been taking me for granted lately, and I wanted to shake things up." There it was. The truth finally coming out. This hadn't been some drunken mistake. It had been a calculated move designed to put me in my place, to show me who really held the power in our relationship. "Well, congratulations," I told her. "You definitely shook things up. Come home," she pleaded. "We can work this out. We can go to counseling. We can fix whatever's broken between us. What's broken is your complete lack of respect for me and for our marriage. You don't fix that with a few therapy sessions. You don't undo what you did tonight by saying you're sorry." Her friend was watching me carefully as I spoke, nodding slightly in approval. She understood what my wife clearly didn't, that some lines, once crossed, change everything permanently. "So what? You're just going to throw away 8 years of marriage because of one bad night?" my wife asked, her voice getting sharper now, more accusatory. "I'm not throwing anything away. You already did that when you took off your ring in front of everyone we know and announced that you were single. You threw it away when you spent an hour flirting with other men while your husband watched. You threw it away when you decided that humiliating me was more important than respecting our relationship." The line went quiet except for the sound of her crying. Part of me, a very small part, almost felt sorry for her. Almost. But then I remembered the look on her face when she'd made her announcement, the satisfaction she'd gotten from the shock and discomfort of everyone around us. the way she deliberately tried to hurt me in the most public way possible. "I'll be contacting a lawyer tomorrow," I told her. "A lawyer?" The panic in her voice was real now. "You can't be serious. Over one stupid mistake." It wasn't a mistake. It was a choice. A series of choices. And now I'm making mine. I hung up and turned off my phone. Her friend was looking at me with something that might have been admiration. "That couldn't have been easy," she said. "Actually, it was easier than I expected. Once you accept that someone has shown you exactly who they are, the rest becomes pretty straightforward." We talked until nearly 2 in the morning. About the job I'd gotten her. About how grateful she'd been. About how she'd always felt guilty for the attraction she'd tried so hard to hide. About how she'd watched my marriage deteriorate over the months. Seen how my wife had become increasingly demanding and dismissive. Noticed how I'd started working later just to avoid going home. She never appreciated what she had. She said as we finally prepared to part ways. Some people don't realize what they're losing until it's already gone. The next morning, I called the best family law attorney in the city. Made an appointment for that afternoon. Started the process of documenting everything that had happened, gathering financial records, making lists of assets and debts. My phone had 17 missed calls when I finally turned it back on. All from her. The voicemail started apologetic and became increasingly angry as the night had progressed. "Please call me back. I'm sorry, okay? Is that what you want to hear? You're being childish. This is ridiculous. Come home so we can talk like adults." "Fine. Be that way. But you're making a huge mistake. I can't believe you're choosing her over your own wife. You're going to regret this." That last one told me everything I needed to know. Even now, she was trying to control the narrative, trying to make this about me choosing another woman instead of about her destroying our marriage with her own actions. I deleted all the messages without listening to the rest and headed to my lawyer's office. Some decisions, once made, require immediate action. This was one of them. The lawyer's office was exactly what I expected: mahogany furniture, law books, and the kind of quiet efficiency that comes with handling other people's disasters for a living. What I didn't expect was how straightforward everything would be. "Based on what you've told me," the attorney said, reviewing the notes he'd taken during our consultation, "this should be relatively clean. No children, assets acquired during marriage are fairly standard, and you have multiple witnesses to the incident that precipitated the separation." I'd given him the facts without embellishment. The party, the ring removal, the public announcement, the witnesses. He'd listened without judgment, occasionally asking clarifying questions about timelines and property ownership. "How long have you been married?" he asked. 8 years. "But we don't own the house together. It was mine before we married, and her name was never added to the deed." He made another note. "That simplifies things considerably. What about her employment status?" "She works part-time at a boutique downtown. Has for about 3 years. Before that, she didn't work at all." The lawyer nodded. "We'll need to discuss potential spousal support, but given the circumstances and the length of employment, it shouldn't be excessive." My phone had been buzzing throughout the meeting. When we finished, I saw a text from numbers I didn't recognize, along with the usual barrage from her. The unknown numbers turned out to be her sister and her mother. Her sister: "What the hell did you do to her? She's been crying all morning." Her mother: "I don't know what happened between you two, but she's family. Don't throw away your marriage over some misunderstanding." I responded to both with the same message. Ask her what she announced to a room full of people last night. Ask her about the ring she removed. Then ask yourself if you'd stay married to someone who publicly humiliated you like that. Neither responded immediately, but an hour later, her sister called. "Okay, I talked to her," she said without preamble. "That was incredibly stupid of her. But people make mistakes. You've been married 8 years. Doesn't that count for something?" It counted right up until she decided it didn't. "Look, I understand you want to support your sister, but she made a choice last night. A very public choice. She can't unmake it just because she doesn't like the consequences. She says you were dancing with her best friend, that you humiliated her right back. I danced with a colleague after my wife announced she was single and spent an hour flirting with other men. If that humiliated her, she should have thought about that before she created the situation." Her sister was quiet for a moment. "She's always been dramatic, even when we were kids. But this seems extreme, even for her." That was interesting. "How do you mean?" "The public thing. Making such a big scene in front of people you have to work with. That's not like her. Usually her drama is more private." I thought about that. My wife had always been attention-seeking, but she was usually more careful about her image, more concerned with how she appeared to others. Last night had been different, more reckless, more destructive. Maybe that's exactly why I can't ignore it, I told her sister. If she's willing to go that far, there's something deeper going on here. By Tuesday afternoon, the calls from family members had stopped, but the workplace dynamics were interesting. Word had clearly gotten around about what happened at the party. My boss called me into his office first thing Monday morning. Look, I don't want to get involved in personal matters, he'd said, but I wanted you to know that what happened Friday night won't affect your position here. You handled a difficult situation with class. Several colleagues made similar comments throughout the week. It seemed that witnessing my wife's public meltdown had actually increased their respect for me, not damaged it. They'd seen how I'd responded under pressure, how I'd refused to be drawn into her drama, how I'd maintained my dignity even while my marriage was imploding in front of them. Her friend, my colleague, and I maintained appropriate professional distance at work, but the connection from that night was still there. We'd grab coffee occasionally, talk about work projects, normal interactions that felt remarkably healthy after years of walking on eggshells at home. Meanwhile, my wife's desperation was escalating. She'd started showing up at places she knew I'd be, the gym, the grocery store, the coffee shop near my office. Each time, she'd try a different approach. First came the tears and apologies. I was stupid. I was drunk. I didn't mean any of it. When that didn't work, she tried anger. You're being petty. You're throwing away our entire marriage over one night. Then came the bargaining. I'll quit my job. We can move somewhere new. Start fresh. And finally, the threats. You'll regret this. You think you're so much better than me, but you're not. Nobody's going to want a divorced man pushing 40. Each encounter reinforced my decision. This wasn't grief over losing our marriage. This was rage over losing control. She wasn't sorry about what she'd done. She was sorry about the consequences. The divorce papers were filed Wednesday morning. She was served Thursday afternoon at her job, which apparently created quite a scene at the boutique. Her manager called me directly. Sir, I don't know what's going on between you and your wife, but she's been completely unprofessional since Monday. Today, when she got those papers, she had a complete breakdown in front of customers. I had to send her home. I apologized for the disruption, but didn't offer any explanations. This was her mess to clean up, not mine. That evening, she showed up at my hotel. Somehow she'd figured out which one I was staying at. The front desk called my room to announce her arrival. Tell her I'm not available, I said. She says it's an emergency, sir. Says she's your wife. She was served divorce papers today. She knows exactly where we stand. I have nothing to discuss with her. But she didn't leave. She sat in the lobby for 3 hours, according to the desk clerk who called to update me periodically. Finally, security had to ask her to leave when she became disruptive, demanding they force me to come downstairs. The next morning brought a different kind of call. Her best friend, my colleague, sounded shaken. She came to my apartment last night, she said, around midnight. She was drunk and angry and saying horrible things about both of us. My neighbors complained about the noise. What kind of things? Accusations. About you and me. About how we planned this whole thing to humiliate her. She kept screaming that I was a terrible friend, that I'd betrayed her by dancing with you. I felt a surge of anger on her behalf. I'm sorry she dragged you into this. It's not your fault, but I think you should know she's not handling this well. At all. And she seems to be blaming everyone except herself. That was my wife in a nutshell. Even now, even faced with divorce papers and the complete collapse of her marriage, she couldn't accept that her own actions had caused this situation. It had to be someone else's fault. Mine for overreacting, her friends for being available to dance with, the alcohols for making her do stupid things. Everyone's fault except her own. The reality of divorce proceedings hit her like a freight train. What had started as her dramatic gesture at a company party was now a legal process with real financial consequences, and she was finally beginning to understand what she'd actually lost. Her lawyer had clearly explained the situation to her in terms she couldn't ignore. The house she'd been living in for 8 years? Mine, purchased before marriage, her name never on the deed. The retirement accounts she'd assumed were half hers, mostly accumulated before we met. The car she drove? In my name, payments made from my account. The phone call came on a Friday, 2 weeks after she'd been served. Her voice was different, smaller, more desperate than I'd ever heard it. We need to talk, she said. Not about getting back together. About the settlement. Your lawyer can talk to my lawyer. That's what they're for. Please, just give me 5 minutes. There are things I need to explain. Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet her at a neutral location, a coffee shop downtown, public enough that she couldn't make a scene. She looked terrible. The confident woman who'd removed her ring at that party was gone, replaced by someone who'd clearly been sleeping poorly and crying frequently. She'd lost weight, and not in a healthy way. I talked to a financial advisor, she started without preamble, about what my life is going to look like after this. I waited. The spousal support your lawyer proposed, it's not enough. I can't live on that. That's what the law provides for a marriage of this length with your employment history. My employment history? Her voice cracked slightly. I worked part-time because you said we didn't need the money. Because you wanted me to be available for dinners and events and trips. There was some truth to that, but not the whole truth. I suggested you might want to consider a career, remember? About 3 years ago. You said you didn't want the stress of a full-time job. She looked away. I thought we were building something together. I thought we were partners. So did I? Right up until you decided to publicly announce that you were single. God, are you ever going to let that go? The old anger flashed in her eyes for a moment. It was one stupid night. It was the night you showed me exactly what you thought of our marriage. And me. She was quiet for a long moment, staring into her coffee cup. When she spoke again, her voice was barely above a whisper. I've been staying with my sister. Her couch. At 35 years old, I'm sleeping on my little sister's couch. I felt a flicker of something. Not sympathy exactly, but recognition of how far she'd fallen from the woman who'd felt powerful enough to humiliate me in front of a room full of people. Your choices led to your circumstances, I said. My choices. She laughed bitterly. You want to know what led to my choices that night? Do you want to know why I felt like I needed to make some grand gesture? I raised an eyebrow but didn't respond. You've been pulling away for months. Coming home later, working more weekends, barely talking to me except about schedules and bills. I felt like I was married to a roommate who tolerated me. So you decided the solution was to humiliate both of us publicly? I decided the solution was to see if you still cared enough to fight for me, to see if there was anything left worth saving. I stared at her. You announced you were single and flirted with other men to see if I cared? I wanted to shake you up, make you realize what you had before you lost it. The logic was so twisted, so completely backwards, that I almost didn't know how to respond. You wanted to save our marriage by ending it. I wanted to save our marriage by making you remember why you married me in the first place. What I remembered that night is exactly why I'm divorcing you now. You're manipulative. You create drama to get attention. You hurt people to make yourself feel powerful. And when it backfires, you blame everyone else. She flinched like I'd slapped her. That's not who I am. That's exactly who you are. That's who you've always been. I just finally stopped making excuses for it. Tears were starting now, real ones, not the manipulative crying she'd used in previous attempts to change my mind. So there's really nothing I can do? Nothing I can say. You could start by taking responsibility for what you did instead of trying to justify it. But even then, no. Some things can't be undone. I lost my job today, she said quietly. That got my attention. What happened? They said my personal issues were affecting my work performance. That the scene when I was served papers was the final straw. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. So now I have no husband, no job, and I'm sleeping on my sister's couch. I should have felt vindicated. This was exactly the kind of consequence she'd never considered when she was busy showing off for an audience. But mostly I just felt tired. I'm sorry it's worked out this way, I said, and meant it. But you created this situation. Every single piece of it. I know, she whispered. I know I did. It was the first time she'd admitted actual responsibility without trying to qualify it or shift blame. Too little, too late, but still. The settlement stands as proposed, I told her. It's fair under the law, which is the only standard that matters now. She nodded, not looking up from her coffee cup. Will you at least tell me one thing? About her. Your colleague. I waited. Are you happy? The question surprised me. I thought about it honestly. I'm happier than I've been in a long time. Not because of her specifically, but because I'm not walking around wondering when the next explosion is going to happen. I'm not trying to manage someone else's emotions or clean up their messes. I can just exist. She absorbed that for a moment. She's lucky. Actually, I think I'm the lucky one. We sat in silence for a few more minutes. Finally, She stood up, gathering her purse and jacket. I'll tell my lawyer to accept the settlement, she said. I don't have much choice at this point. For what it's worth, I hope things get better for you. I hope you figure out what you actually want instead of just reacting to what you think you're missing. She paused at the table, looking down at me. I wanted you to fight for me that night. That's what I thought love looked like, someone fighting for you even when you were being terrible. Real love looks like not being terrible to each other in the first place. She nodded slowly. I guess I never learned that. As she walked away, I realized this was probably the last real conversation we'd ever have. The papers would be signed, the assets divided, the marriage officially ended. But this moment, her finally acknowledging what she'd done and why, felt like the actual conclusion. 6 months later, the divorce was finalized. The judge signed the papers on a Tuesday morning, and by lunch, I was officially single again. 8 years of marriage ended with a stamp and a signature. I'd moved out of the hotel weeks earlier and found a small but comfortable apartment closer to work. Nothing fancy, but it was mine. Every piece of furniture, every decision about paint colors, every choice about how to spend my evenings, all mine to make without drama or manipulation. The company had promoted me to regional manager 3 months after the party. My boss mentioned during the review that my handling of difficult personal circumstances had shown the kind of leadership qualities they valued. Apparently, maintaining your dignity under pressure makes an impression. My relationship with her former best friend had developed naturally over the months. We'd started with coffee, moved to dinners, and eventually admitted what we'd both known since that dance. We were good together in ways that felt effortless. No games, no tests, no manufactured drama to shake things up. Just two adults who enjoyed each other's company and treated each other with respect. She'd been worried about the optics at first, concerned that people would think we'd planned the whole situation. But the truth was simpler and more honest. We hadn't looked for this, but we weren't going to pretend it wasn't real when it found us. I ran into my ex-wife at Target one afternoon. She looked better than she had at the coffee shop months earlier, healthier, more put together. She was with a man I didn't recognize, someone closer to her own age with an easy smile and patient demeanor. Hi, she said simply when our paths crossed in the electronics section. Hi, you look good. Thanks. I'm doing better. She paused, glancing at the man beside her. This is David. David, this is my ex-husband. He shook my hand without awkwardness, clearly someone who'd heard the whole story and wasn't intimidated by it. Smart man. I got a job, she continued. Full-time, at a marketing firm downtown. It's challenging, but I like it. That's great. I'm glad you're moving forward. She nodded. I wanted to apologize. Again, not because I want anything, but because I understand now what I put you through. The therapy helped me see how destructive my behavior was. I appreciate that. You were right, about taking responsibility, about consequences. I spent most of my adult life thinking I could act however I wanted and then charm my way out of the fallout. That night at the party, that was me at my worst. We all have moments we'd rather forget. The difference is most people don't destroy their marriages in front of an audience, she said with a slight smile that held no malice. But I learned from it. Finally, David put his hand on her shoulder, a gentle gesture that spoke of patience and support. She'd found someone who could handle her dramatic tendencies without enabling them. I should let you go, she said. But I'm genuinely happy you found someone who appreciates you properly. She always did, even when I was too selfish to see it. As they walked away together, I realized I felt something I hadn't expected: closure. Not forgiveness exactly, but acceptance that we'd both learned what we needed to learn from the experience. My phone buzzed with a text from my girlfriend asking if I wanted to try that new restaurant downtown. Simple question, no hidden agenda, no test to see how I'd respond. Sounds perfect, I texted back. See you at 7. That evening, over dinner, she asked how my day had been. I told her about running into my ex-wife, about how civil the encounter was, how strange it felt to see that chapter of my life truly closed. Any regrets? She asked. I thought about it honestly. Just one. I regret not recognizing who she really was sooner. I could have saved both of us a lot of pain. Maybe you both needed to learn those lessons at your own pace. Maybe. But I'm grateful it led me here. She smiled across the table, the kind of genuine warmth that doesn't require performance or manipulation. Me too. Some people spend their whole lives accepting treatment they don't deserve, making excuses for behavior that shouldn't be excused, staying in situations that diminish them. That night at the company party, watching my wife remove her ring and announce her independence, I could have chosen to be one of those people. Instead, I chose to believe I deserved better. And it turned out I was right.